On this James the Bike Guy, we're taking a look at something super neat. This is the 2019 Santa Cruz Blur Frameset. This is a really cool brand new bike from Santa Cruz, and what we have here is the Blur C carbon fiber frame. Now, what makes this really neat is this is Santa Cruz coming back to the true cross-country performance race category. So this is a 100mm travel suspension bike with the VPP suspension design. So this has a dual counter-rotating links, one here and then one down just above the bottom bracket area. And that counter-rotating link is what's going to allow for a really great control over the suspension of this bike. Now, speaking of the suspension, on the back end, this is running the Fox DPS. On the CC version, it'll have the Kashima Coat Fox Factory Performance, but here we've got the DPS, and this shock is a unique size. So this is a 170mm eye-to-eye with a 35mm stroke. So it's a pretty unique shock. You can see that it's a very stubby, very short travel shock, but the nice thing is it's metric sizing, so I'm sure as this becomes more common, there's going to be a lot of different shock options available. Now, the other neat thing to talk about with the rear end of this bike is actually how it's set up. So you can see here on the rear end that this is symmetrical both on the drive side and non-drive side. And what's also really neat is the back end of the bike is actually all one piece. So this is a one-piece design, which is going to allow it to be mega stiff compared to some of the other designs out there. And then your lower link, which is made out of aluminum, and the upper link is also machined out of aluminum. So you end up with a very nice finish on this bike, and it looks really nice. I also like how they actually use some Enduro angular contact bearings inside of here. So that means the service life should actually be quite a bit of time as well. The back of this bike is actually going to have clearance for 2.4-inch tires. So this 29er's got plenty of room. I like how they have this scalloped out. And on the chainstay, it's actually got this really nice molded rubber guard. So you can actually see it's molded into the frame. It is removable, of course, but it's going to be nice and robust. Now, Santa Cruz on the back end is going to be running the integrated derailleur hanger that also works as the threaded spot for your through axle. And the bike is going to come with a DT Swiss through axle and post mount 160 standard for the brakes. So you can see here, post mount 160, run a 160 rotor, and your caliper will just slide right on. So as far as specifications are concerned, this is running a 31.6mm seat tube diameter, and it is dropper post compatible, meaning you can add a dropper post to this. 31.6 means it's going to fit just about everything out there. And speaking of routing, that's where we'll come in to cable routing. So this is all internal. Now this is a spot where it deviates a little bit from some of the other Santa Cruz models. This is going to be internal cable routing for the shifter, dropper, and external for your rear brake, and that's all pretty normal. But the internal routing is not sleeved like you might see in a traditional Santa Cruz, and that's because they're trying to help save weight, pull some of that weight out of there. So you're going to run some foam tubing in there to keep it nice and quiet. The other thing that I really love about this VPP setup is traditionally what you would end up having is your cable comes out and then it makes sort of this loop to the chainstay. And normally you end up getting some rub on the side of the seat tube. Well, they've actually solved this go around. So if you look inside of here, it's a little tough to see, but there's actually a small little mount that allows you to zip tie the cable on the inside of the brace that's coming across where the seat tube is. And that's going to allow the cable never to run into contact with the seat tube and should keep everything going really well. Now, this bike is set up for a 120 to 100 millimeter fork. So in the standard format, this bike is going to come with a 100mm fork, and that's going to give it a 69-degree head tube angle and then a 74-degree seat tube angle. If you end up running this in the TR version, the trail version, or run this with a 110 fork, it's going to slacken that head tube angle half a degree to 68.5 degrees, and then the seat tube angle to 73.5 degrees. So that's going to slack this out a little bit. And then Santa Cruz will let you even take it a touch further by running that 120mm fork. Now the head tube on the bike, this is of course going to be tapered. So this is a tapered 1.125 to 1.5 head tube. It is a integrated carbon race, so it's going to be super lightweight, and it's going to allow you to run a IS 41mm upper bearing and then an IS 52mm lower bearing. Well, now that we've taken a look at some of the features of this frame, let's go ahead, place this onto our scale, and we'll see what this weighs in at. We've got our frame here going right onto the trusty box to help us get a frame weight, and you'll see that this comes in at a super lightweight 2386, even with that Fox DPS rear shock. Now keep in mind, this is the Blur C version, so expect that the CC will even be a bit lighter. Well, thanks for watching this video on the Santa Cruz Blur. Go ahead, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and as always, click that subscribe button so you can see more videos like this into the future.